I'm going to go through a behavior management. So this is a behavior management in schools, but it also is the same context in madrasas as well. And again, this is extremely important because behavior is one of the key fundamental issues which most schools and madrasas face, regardless of where you are in any part of the world. So I'm going to go through this behavior management module with you, inshallah. The learning objective of this particular module is to be able to understand what behavior management is, to be able to understand the different reasons students misbehave, to be able to overcome misbehavior from a whole school approach, and to be able to overcome barriers to teaching and learning. And again, it's extremely important, even when you're delivering lessons, that you have learning objectives, which we call LOs. And here comes, these are the different reasons. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I'm sure you will all agree these are the reasons why. Okay? And remember, like I mentioned, 90-95% of the time, it's not your fault. So don't take it personally. And you need to overcome this because it's not your fault. Okay? So some of them are lonely, some are just attention seeking and so forth. And again, that's extremely important for you to understand. Science of behavior has taught us that students are not born with bad behaviors. So students generally, don't behave bad. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to misbehave in the lesson. Okay, I'm going to misbehave in school or madrasa. No. Okay, things happen, and that's why they have these bad behaviors. Do not learn when presented aversive consequences. Keep on shouting at them, given a detention. There's no point on that. You need to have different strategies. But do learn better ways of behaving by being taught directly and receiving consistent positive feedback. The more you encourage them and the more positive mindset you have and the positive mindset your students have, they will learn better. And in some cases, 150, 200, 250%. So this is the kind of strategy that we look at. And again, I'm not going to go too much in detail, but I'm just giving you an overview of this behavior management strategy. Normally, we spend about 2.5 hours on this particular module. I'm going to try and kind of wrap it up in about 30 minutes. So challenging behavior, we see that. And we need to know, why do some students show challenging behavior? So we need to look at the psychology of that. We need to look at the ABC of behaviors. What tools are there to help us tackle with challenging behavior? And we need to look at the strategies and approaches which should be adopted to deal with misbehavior. So again, as part of this module, we cover all these elements. Think time, I'm going to slightly move on to think time, but normally what I would ask you is think of a while for the most challenging behavior that you've had in your classroom. So what I would ask you to do is write this down, okay, that you have faced in your classroom. Okay, so normally we spend about 5 minutes discussing this, but again, because we've only got a 2-hour session and we're slightly kind of running out of time, I'm going to go ahead with this. Development of challenging antisocial behavior. We see that in early childhood behavior, poor parental discipline monitoring. So again, from young age, if this is not available, then what happens is child conducts problems, rejection in middle childhood, rejection by a normal peer group, academic failure, and as they grow older, commitment to deviant peer group, and then delinquency. Okay, each person who's involved in crime or something similar to that, if you look at, there are issues of trauma and childhood issues. It all then manifests into late childhood and adolescence. Okay, the bad news is long-term risk increases with each stage. So if we don't support these students at an early age, especially primary, secondary level, then it doesn't get any better. It actually gets worse. So this is our responsibility as teachers to connect them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the good news is we can take these kids off this developmental pathway. So you as a facilitator, you as a teacher can support these students at a whole new level. Normally we have a graph here which goes kind of similar to this. But what I'm not going to do today is I'm not going to go through that graph today. And again, but I'm just going to show you the ABC of behaviors. Is when an incident occurs, you look at the antecedents. In other words, what happened before that behavior? So let's say 20 minutes into the lesson, the student started swearing. So something must have happened before he stood up and started swearing. So it could be provoked, it might have had a skirmish in the playground, it might have had a skirmish at home, something happened. So always find the antecedent why that happened. Then we look at the behavior. In other words, let's say minute 20 of the lesson, what is the actual behavior itself? And then we look at consequences. In other words, this misbehavior has happened, what are the after effects? But students need to know and understand what are the consequences of that misbehavior. And like I said, I'll be going more into detail on this during the course itself. Okay, so what triggers misbehaviors? What happens immediately preceding the problem challenge I mentioned? What triggers the behavior? So we need to look at the activity, what peers, what tasks, and describe in detail. What normally we have, or what we do is we have something called an incident report. Okay, and in that incident report, we log all those details. Now, as part of the course, I provide all those resources to you. Consequences. So in other words, what are the consequences that are going to, if student misbehaves, depending on the misbehavior or the level or intensity of the misbehavior, then there will be certain consequences. Okay, and the students need to understand that. So what normally happens is, what I do is I have a certain 5-step procedure. The 5-step procedure starts from behavior passport, number 1. Number 2, we look at also the a monitoring chart, which is all the good things that they do, then they get certain points. All the misbehaviors, then there are negative points. So you have a positive, negative, and positive kind of behavior charts, which students understand that. We also have something called a behavior certificate. So we look at the top 5 behaviors that students should be looking at in classroom, because if you've got 35, 40 behaviors you're tackling, there's no way you can tackle all 35 behaviors. Okay, so we need to focus on a few, and again, that comes through a data analysis sheet, which we go into more details in the behavior management module. I talked about earlier about proprioception, so space, displays, respect, seating arrangement, absolutely critical. Is it horseshoe? Is it examination? How are you, having your arrangements in the classroom? You have a quiet area in the classroom where students can just read books if they want to. If they completed their work earlier, they can go in a carpeted section in the corner of the classroom where they can just quietly read. Okay, noise. What is acceptable? What is not acceptable? If students are fun, engaged, interactive, and levels are slightly high, but as long as they're engaged, will you accept that? Certain times yes, certain times no. Okay, light. If it's too bright, that gives students headaches. If it's too much sunlight coming in, you need to look at that as well. If it's too dim, that will make students go to sleep. Again, that needs to be taken into consideration. And then if it's too hot or too cold, that's going to have an effect as well. Okay, students sitting near the door where cold breezes coming in, they might not like that. So again, there has to be a balance on that. Also, safety, health and safety, absolutely important. If this class is too clustered, then students, will nudge each other as they're going from one end to another, or if they're going to the toilet, for example, and there shouldn't be any wires sticking out. There shouldn't be too much storage inside your classroom. Equipment should be all put away, or only take out what is necessary and needed as well. Teaching behavior routines, and again, that's extremely important as well. And again, we can look. I talked about the step by step. Explain at the beginning of the year, and every single day focus on one behavior. So, for example, I get all my students to, for example, stand outside the line in a line, and as soon as they enter the classroom, they know exactly what to do. So on my board, for example, there'll be the learning objectives, there'll be success criteria, there'll be the keywords, there'll be the Bloom's taxonomy, there'll be the SMSC or the Tarbiyah program. These are the characteristics that we're looking at in terms of holistic education. So these behavior has to be practiced on a day-to-day basis. So on day 1, you will explain to them what is expected of them. Okay. Then number 2, you will show them how to line up, how to sit down, come inside the classroom. Within 2 minutes, they should put their bag underneath their chair, get out their stationery, their books, and the work is already on the board, so they need to start the work. Okay, so worksheets are given, etc., etc. And then if certain students are misbehaving, ask them to practice and lead how model desired behavior looks like. Okay, monitor test regularly. So again, you're testing. So today I might say, right, I want silence in the lesson. And certain students can't, stay quiet. You need to find out why that's happening. So like I said, sometimes you might not need to say anything. And if you are exerting yourself too much, that's going to burn you out as well. So sometimes you might have a quiet lesson. Follow up, reinforce, and review regularly. Again, these 5 steps are extremely important. And this is just an overview, by the way. When I do the behavior management module with you as part of the course, I go give you all the resources, all the materials. I go through everything with you. Constant praise is usually 4-to-1 ratio of praise to reprimand. Statements is desirable. Using about 6 praise statements every 15 minutes is also recommendable as well. Okay, so remember that as well. And effective praise is spontaneous and genuine. Should be specific and reveal your knowledge of what the student has actually done. So Abdullah has written a really amazing piece of work. That's fantastic. Do you want to just quickly stand up? Everyone put your pens down. Could you just read out what you've read, what you've written? And again, that kind of encourages the students as well. So if they've done something really good, praise them and be consistent with that as well. Also, students should be taught how to handle constructive criticism when they make mistakes. Allow them to make mistakes. Is what they learn from the mistakes is quite important. So they know that they can make a mistake. So they've done a piece of work and they've got a few errors. That's fine. They need to self-reflect like we've done today and say, right, where do we stand with this? What are the mistakes and how do we identify those mistakes? Because sometimes they're not aware. So we show them how to identify the mistakes and then how to improve. So again, we all make mistakes as we are all human beings. Mistakes. So again, last thought. Being an effective classroom manager is not a talent which some people just have and others do not. It is a set of skills and attitude learned through patience and practice. Okay, so not everyone is kind of born with being an outstanding teacher. And over time, inshallah, throughout this course, if you continue with this course, you will learn all the skills to not just affect yourself. It'll affect your home life. It'll affect your relationships. It'll affect your relationship with your parents, your partners, your wife, your husband, your children, your community, because you are now in control of your own thought process. You have a positive mindset. You have that swagger. And because you've learned all the skills, people will see that. And I'll bring a couple of my students in as part of the course, during the course, to show you how they have improved and how they've now transformed not only their madrasas, but have also transformed themselves. High quality teaching. Again, we looked at differentiation, engaging, and we looked at the 11 aspects which we've looked at before. And again, each and every single aspect of that needs to be looked at. So we need to focus on areas, on all the 11 areas, and ensure we are outstanding in each area. Okay. So again, I've gone through that. Any questions so far? I'm going to give you about a minute to just ask me any questions on what you've done in the behavior management module. And again, because I've only been through 15 minutes, normally it's 3 hours. I show you how to look at the behavior charts. I look at behavior, the passport. I look at the behavior strategies, the data analysis, how to look at data, how to collect that data, how to analyze that data, how to then have a whole school approach, whole classroom approach to improve in a particular aspect of that behavior. And that's part of the Tarbiyah program, and that's based on the Quran and Sunnah as well. And again, it's extremely important to understand that. Okay, so again, that's a 2-3 hour module as well.